Hello everyone. So this is just a short introduction to something a little bit different. This week I've got a video Zoom conversation between myself and well-known personal trainer Andy Vincent. Andy's a good friend of mine. We've known each other for some years and we discuss the advantages and disadvantages of calorie tracking. Right, so today I'm here with Andy Vincent, live from my beefer. How you doing, Andy?
Yeah, very good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. So first and foremost, introduce yourself, mate.
So I'm a coach, personal trainer. I've been a trainer now for almost 20 years, 19, 20 years. I was at Third Space in central London, and I moved out to Ibiza last year just for a bit more of a work-life balance. So now I'm pretty much all online.
Well, the reason we're doing this today is we were having a conversation the other day and we were discussing calorie tracking. And we both have very similar views on it, if I'm honest, but we're also both quite passionate about it. And just it occurred to me during that conversation that it would have made a really good video for YouTube. So, I mean, what are your views on tracking? I mean, let's start with what is tracking and when do we need to track, more importantly. I mean, I find that tracking is a great way to record your calories that you're eating every day and drinking every day. But, you know, I think sometimes people lose their way with the objective. They sort of, you know, they might choose MyFitnessPal, for example, and they become really good at sort of MyFitnessPal. Matter of fact, I've even heard clients say to me, my app wasn't working properly on Friday, so I didn't track. And it turned out that they took that as an opportunity to eat lots of crap.
Yeah.
And I'm like, huh. So the app didn't work, but that somehow made you not stick to your diet. I mean, the objective must be either, you know, if you're tracking your calories, you must have an objective of maybe losing body fat, increasing muscle, or just trying to find your maintenance weight. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think tracking's got its place. I think both you and I have been in the business long enough to have done this without tracking, and had success with clients without tracking. I think if you're totally new to nutrition and you go to your cupboard and you don't know what protein is, you don't really know what a fat really is, and even if you might know some things, if you can't look at pretty much every single food that you eat regularly and say, yeah, I can identify protein, carbs, and fat, and I roughly know within reason, like how many calories each meal kind of is. So if you're totally new, you use it as a way to educate yourself. So when you go out for dinner or you're at a friend's house or just generally, you can sort of look at a plate of food, and it's not always to be able to, but look at a plate of food and you could say, I've cooked chicken before. I can see that chicken portion size is about this. So you just can't, you can make that 2-second, if that thought in your head, over the course of the day. Also, if you're not good with serving size, I think the first thing that I think you're used to this yourself, like the first thing that happens is people weigh rice the first time and they think about rice that we were given as a kid when your parents cooked for you, or you go to an Indian restaurant, you're like, wow, actually a 70-gram serving of rice is not that big. Or 70 grams of carbohydrate from 100 grams of rice isn't actually as big as you think.
And then you've got the whole complex. Oh, is that dry weight or cooked?
yeah. So, and yeah, I guess if you're the sort of person, and we get this all the time, like, I want to lose fat, I know what to do. It's like, well, if that's your thoughts on nutrition and how to achieve fat loss, weight loss, whatever it is, then probably tracking is a good place for you to start. Because
it's more of an educating tool, isn't it?
Just to educate yourself. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I mean, like people lose their way with it, with their food, and they get themselves into problems. I think it's safe to say if someone comes to you and this is an extreme example, and they're morbidly obese, then it's probably fair to say that they've lost the whole concept of portion sizes and they're not entirely sure what protein, carbohydrates, and fats are. And really, at that point, it maybe doesn't matter. Maybe what does matter is just having an understanding of the amount that you're eating and trying to reduce it, and then obviously trying to match that with some sort of activity change. I mean, answering that question, I think it's safe to say that it's not always necessary to track your calories. I mean, in what cases would you say would be a bad idea to track your calories?
So this is where I get quite frustrated in the industry, because you get a lot of coaches, especially young coaches. I've done the precision nutrition. I did Poliquin's BioSig, and it's probably the topic I read the most about. I'm not a nutritionist. And when I speak to nutritionists, they don't suggest tracking. I feel like it's the first thing as a coach we tell people to do, but coaches aren't usually that well qualified in nutrition. So if you've got someone that comes to you and you've not done due diligence to find out they've got a history of eating, not even like an eating disorder, you might find that out. They might have a poor relationship with food. They might have issues with anxiety that trigger food-related responses. They might be in quite a stressful relationship. It might be that kind of like A1 personality type that goes all in on numbers, and then they live their life to spreadsheets. Those people, and the A1 personality, they might love tracking, but then you're 3 months down the line and the conversation you had like about the app was not working, things go wrong, they start fretting over like, oh, I went 50 grams over my carbs yesterday, I can't believe it. And then you've created, unless you've laid down the framework to say, hey, tracking's a tool.
Yeah.
There's inaccuracies involved in it. So use it to educate yourself and step out of it. As long as you've done your due diligence, you've asked the questions in the first place, because you can't blanket say all of you, everyone out there that's trying to lose body fat needs to track. Because you guess what? 10 years ago, I had no issues getting clients lean, and we didn't have tracking available to us then. So it's like, we've just got some tech. It has its place.
Much like tracking your steps, you know. I mean, I know you feel passionately about that. So
I got a schooling a little bit as well. I got an email from Apple to explain why I have that sentiment on calorie calculators. That's a different conversation.
Yeah, we might breach that another time, I think.
Like, you've got to realize that there are so many inaccuracies just generally. Like, so what is a calorie? A calorie is a man-made unit placed on food.
That's right.
So we're putting energy from food into numbers just to simplify it for ourselves, which is very handy. But we do need to think of food outside of just its numerical energy, and think about it from what does this stuff do at a cellular level to improve me function as a human being. So when you've educated yourself on carbs, fats, and protein, and you can eyeball a plate of food and say, okay, roughly I've not eaten enough protein today, I need to boost it. Then we need to stop thinking about numbers so much and start thinking holistically about what food does to nourish us, because that's our main source of like contact with our environment internally, is what we eat. So
we need to be more intuitive, don't we? You know, we need to be able to look at a plate of food and say that's too much, or that's not enough. You know, whichever. And an app won't do that. Matter of fact, what it will do over time, as you say, long term, it will actually detach you from that and potentially make it worse. And there are always outliers, as you say. You know, there'll be people that love numbers, and you're doing a lot of beeping. Is that where your eyes are going?
Sorry, yes. Hoping that wouldn't get picked up.
Sorry, I thought I'd point it out for you.
I feel like it makes it sound really, really important, but it's not at all.
I mean, we didn't want to do a super long video, but I mean, you know, we really wanted to answer the questions of why tracking is important, how tracking can help, and I mean, what did you and I were talking the other day, and we decided, what was it, say 4 weeks maybe is probably the most beneficial time period.
Yeah, instincts. I've got a lot of new online clients at the moment, and we're in sort of week 2, and I've sort of said to them, 2 weeks is kind of where I would say to draw the line. If it's beneficial for you and you don't feel like you know enough yet, run it for 4 weeks, and then strategically stop. And then I think, like we were saying, is like, you need to make sure that you're not just tracking and you are looking at the data. It's not just the end of the day calories that you're looking at, that you actually
and also people go to you, they say to you, they come in and they have them aha moments, don't they, where they say, did you know that there's this many calories in this? And you're like, yes, now you know. And I always say to clients, you don't know till you know, which is irritating. But they once they know something like that, you know, you can sit and eat a dairy milk and not know how many calories are in it and not really feel that bad about it. But once you know how many calories are in a dairy milk, you're going to be a lot more mindful about how much and if you even choose to eat it in the end, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's also important when you're tracking to become educated, just to begin to understand that protein has, 1 gram of protein has 4 calories, same as carbohydrates, and then there's 9 calories for fats. And so when you're building up when you start to get past calories and into macronutrients, which is something else that is very important, especially protein, then that's when you start to get a fuller understanding of what diet's made up of. I mean, how do you feel about?
Yeah, definitely. And then you can start to think about, because ultimately you're never counting calories. You're counting macronutrients and then just doing the calculations. So all the app does is see how many grams of protein times it by 4, how many grams of carbohydrates times it by 4, how many grams of fat times it by 9.
Yeah.
And then you can start to look at your diet, and this is not a coach, this is a person, and go, oh, I seem to eat a lot of fat. That's interesting. And then you can sort of scan your diet, and if you can see that your total daily calorie consumption should be 1,600 calories for a girl, maybe 2,000, 2,100 for a guy, and you've got one meal that kicks out at 1,000 calories, you can go, well, what can I do to make that meal leaner or less calorie dense? And maybe
it's not about dramatically changing your diet, is it? I've seen in some cases where I've taken on clients and they've showed me old food diaries and whatnot, and they've gone from eating, I don't know, spaghetti bolognese and some sandwiches for lunch to salad. And it's just like, do you like salad? Not really. Oh. Well, and that is an extreme example, but I mean, it's about trying to realize that you can eat the foods that you like and enjoy, but there might be a case for them being less calories or smaller portions. I mean, it's very simple in essence. And calorie tracking is a tool. I mean, as we've been saying, I mean, when would you say that ultimately calorie tracking isn't useful at all? Absolutely. So people that are maybe watching this and considering it, I mean, what would you say? I mean, we've already said after 2 to 4 weeks, it becomes a bit redundant, or maybe you start to use it as a crutch. But would you say there's a case for people that maybe had eating disorders or, like you said earlier, obsess over numbers?
Yeah, so like you sort of touched on, so it's not like you have to have if you had an eating disorder, it probably isn't advisable anyway, and you might know that. But even if you just not got a very strong relationship with food, if you have any kind of issues with emotional eating, if you've got any kind of issues with like stress, anxiety leading to it's not like it's not wrong to educate yourself. So you can educate yourself in other ways. So you can do a photo food journal and look at a whole day's worth of food, because it can get quite hard to like get to the evening and remember what you had for breakfast and lunch. So just taking photos of food. But yeah, and if you are that sort of person that's just going to get obsessed with it, and you're just going to get like so focused on numbers and how great it is that you've hit these things and you're ticking off wins, but then the problem is when you haven't got time to do it, or something happens and you're over, and it's going to start to kind of, or over your calories or under your protein. If you start to get really dialed into those numbers, then it's the sort of thing that probably, again, same things, do it for a little bit and then pull away. But there are other ways to manage nutrition, and there's other ways to sort of to look at your food and to educate yourself without tracking.
I mean, I love actually prefer as a coach when I get photo food diaries, because it's much more fun to look at. And actually, like, where you and I have been doing this now, well, you've been doing it for 20 years and I've been doing it for roughly a decade and a half now. And I can look at a plate of food and sort of guess what the protein, carbs and fats are, or at least tell you if there's too much protein or too much fat or too much carbohydrate. And that's something that I want them to learn. So it's a lot more fun to look at it. And I've been going through someone's iPhone and said to them, okay, this plate of something, for example, how many calories do you think are in that? And you can look at it and be like I said, spaghetti bolognese. I love spaghetti bolognese. I'm not demonizing it.
That's you brought it up twice as well. You must love it.
Yeah, I do love it. so you get a big bowl of pasta. Now people don't realize how calorie dense that can be, do they? And they think it's okay, because it's not chips or burger or anything else that's been sort of told as being fast food or unhealthy. So yeah, photo food diaries are a great option for people that don't want to track. And there are people that are aware that they get obsessive over numbers and things like that. But I mean, people that want to learn about protein, carbohydrates and fats, then, you know, you can still do that if you use the equations that we spoke about before, can't you, really? So
yeah, I mean, you just ultimately what My Fitness Pal does is we used to always coach. I'm sure we were the same. We used to coach like how to look at a food label.
yeah.
So you just, when you're in the supermarket, you just flick over your yogurt and you just see how many grams of fat per portion. And then you also then have to teach people, because food labeling is pretty brutal. You can be like a 30-gram portion of peanuts. Yeah, I mean, who on God's earth only can have 30 grams of peanuts? Like I have to this day still weigh, or not necessarily weigh, but I have to stop myself when it comes to things like nuts and nut butters.
Everyone's got their trigger foods, haven't they? You know?
Yeah. So I mean, it's just a way of kind of like almost shortcutting that process. But to a degree, you need to be able to be in a supermarket, if you're shopping in a supermarket, for example, and know these things anyway. And if you're not looking at the data, then it's quite hard to know. So I live my life in meals rather than sort of ingredients. So I think of like back to the bolognese. So you can make a bolognese 1,000. You can make a bolognese 2,000 calories, or you can make a bolognese 500 calories. So you can go for 20% fat mince that tastes amazing. You can dump a load of vegetable oil in the pan. You can put cheese all over it at the end and have a massive portion. Or you can
mix bacon in there, all sorts of things, can you? Yeah.
So you can, and some of those things are really obvious, but like even stuff like free pouring oil into a pan, just go get yourself a really good set of non-stick frying pan or non-stick saucepan. You haven't then got and if you've got 5% mince, there's enough fat in that to cook it in. So you can just strip a load of calories out, same meal, maybe have a side serving of veggies to make sure that it's got enough matter to it, like enough pulp, and then just bring the portion size down. So you can have exactly the same foods, super tasty, awesome. It's not really going to change your palate, or it's not going to be that much of a change to your palate, but you can just bring the calories down. And then if you know that way of cooking that spaghetti bolognese yields 40 grams of protein and it's 500 calories, personally, as a common sense human being, I don't need to track that meal ever again. I know my meal is 500 calories.
And let's face it, we all, roughly eat, I would say, the same 20 to 30 meals a year. You know, no one's like looking through the cookbook every day going, okay, what can I try that's different? So once you know them meals, once you've established them and you know how much they are, then you can roughly work it out. And the other thing to think about as well is if you go 100 calories over, nothing bad's going to happen. It'll be okay. You know, it's not a cause for throwing everything out the window. I mean, the other thing about it as well is the things surrounding your diet. So we have this sort of, as you said, man-made creation of calories, but the same with breakfast, lunch and dinner. It's almost an agreement that we have breakfast, lunch and dinner, regardless of whether we're hungry or not.
Yeah.
And we track the calories in their meals, but there are other ways as well, like alcohol being another one, snacks being another one. There are so many other things surrounding that will bulk out your calories. And another thing about tracking is when you do track in the beginning, you catch them habits. You go, geez, I didn't realize I was having 7 biscuits with a cup of tea. Something you mindfully think about, but actually now you're looking at it going, oh my gosh, I ate 7 biscuits with a tea, which, let's face it, is very easy to do. And all of a sudden you're 300 or 400 calories up and you're like, whoa, on 7 biscuits that actually I don't even remember eating, So there is that, and we were speaking the other day, and we agreed on the fact that palm sizes is a nice way of measuring things as well. And if you've got really big hands, then you must be. I hope you're a really big person as well. I know you can take the hit. But anyway,
I think that's a really good way of doing it. I think use palm sizes. That's really helpful. Use tracking to identify what's on your plate, roughly food sizes. Work in meals, not ingredients. So just know your meals, know they all turn out roughly the same amount of calories. If there's one particular meal that you cook that is 1,000 calories, then you're probably going to need to make sure that you have a lighter lunch or something. Long-term tracking is never going to work because you might sneak back into those 7 biscuit moments and not track it because you're in a meeting or something and stuff happens. So the data is just not going to be accurate enough to want to do it long term. So educate, and then when you feel you've gone through that process, then don't do it unless you feel like you want to just sort of like tighten up again in a few months' time. Then bring it back in, of course.
Yeah, that's good advice. I mean, and also just be aware of the things surrounding the tracking and your eating as well. You know, things such as locations. Sometimes, you know, if you find yourself at work and you find yourself going to the same shop every day, don't try and change that habit. Maybe just have a relook at the shop and see if there's anything healthy you can get, or can you make lunch. And there's also people as well, you know, not that they do it intentionally, but there are people that, if you're on a diet, they offer you cake. They've never offered you cake in their life. But all of a sudden they will turn up to work with donuts. And, you know, so yeah, they're things to watch out for. But mate, we wanted to keep it really short, didn't we? So
we didn't keep that short, did we?
No, well, we knew he wouldn't, let's face it. But we'll see what happens in editing. But mate, absolutely tops to talk to you.
As always.
Let's try and do this again some point. We'll think of something else to chat about. But I'm going to say goodbye.
Lots to chat about.
To summarize, I think it's safe to say that tracking is a really valuable tool, but it isn't for everyone. 2 to 4 weeks is a good length of time to track unless you're really enjoying it, but beware of the inaccuracies. Use tracking as a tool to educate yourself on your own personal nutrition, and remember that food is more than energy. Yes, it's important, but the quality of your food matters too. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and see you next time.